This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from People Forward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self.
Hey everyone, it's Rosie. I just really loved this conversation that you're about to listen to with Melanie Stuber. She is so aligned with the work that we do. She is the founder and CEO of Cultivate and Thrive. She is a strategy and culture guide. She's a keynote speaker. She's a workshop facilitator, and she made a shift after 25 years in financial services industry and in corporate to really being her authentic self. She talks a lot about feeling like she had to show up something other than who she was, and the journey that she was on to really learn and own who she authentically is and embrace vulnerability as part of that path. She talks about some of the tools that she uses in her work that she does. We talk a lot about the value of becoming our own personal board of directors and building our own personal board of directors that I think there's a ton of value in you're going to want to listen for. She also talks about her aligned framework and talks about her Thrive as a Leader framework. So there's a lot of just really, some of it's common sense that you probably forgot about. Some of it's new ways of thinking about things. She gives some reflective questions that she has in some of her exercises that she gives to clients to help you really start to think about and own your authentic leadership, what makes you uniquely you, and your value proposition. I think you're going to get a lot out of this one. Take a listen. Ms. Melanie, I am excited to have this conversation. I have a feeling this is going to be another one of these geek out, nerd out sessions where all things leadership, authenticity, like just goodness. So just thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Rosie. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Me too. Well, we are going to dive in. There's so many different places we could start, but I know there's just a lot of synergy in the work that we do and the work you do. And we definitely need more people in the world to really understand and do the work to show up as courageous, vulnerable, authentic leaders in their lives and really embrace human-centric skills to navigate us through, AI can't form relationships or reciprocal relationships, I should say, right? AI isn't worried about aging parents and all those types of things. And I just think that there's so much going on in our world that leads to us showing up in self-protective mode, showing up armored, showing up defensive, rather than being able to be a better version of ourselves. And I know you talk a lot about how you had to learn to be vulnerable in an environment where it's very easy to have to show up in self-protective mode or feeling like you need to. So I just want to start there. Like, talk about how did you learn about the value of leveraging vulnerability as a strength and kind of where you're at now?
So a little background on myself. I am formerly from the corporate world. I spent over 25 years in the corporate world, predominantly in the financial services industry, and had a wonderful career. And through that, though, I was often one of the only women leaders in the room. And so I think that I had this tremendous pressure I placed on myself to feel that I needed to show up polished, not make mistakes, don't show any vulnerability because that's just a sign of weakness. And I carry that with me, I would say, for most of my career, up until I would say about the last 5-6 years ago. It was really when I got more involved in the culture space, when I became more involved in my last role and career in the employee resource groups and with the diversity, equity, inclusion councils. I had this wonderful opportunity to learn from others who practice vulnerability. I also had a wonderful leader who demonstrated his vulnerability. And when I saw that, it was almost a relief, this burden that I'd been carrying of, I have to be polished, buttoned up. And I saw this in others. And I thought, wow, that's a great example of leadership, because when you're vulnerable, you don't have to be perfect, because when you are seen, whether it is true or not, seen as a perfect leader, I didn't realize the tremendous pressure also placed on the people around you, because then they feel that they need to be perfect, not make mistakes. And so it was through my experience, honestly, when I got involved in the culture space and these amazing leaders that I learned from, and I learned the value of being vulnerable, that it became so meaningful for me. And I speak about it often because I do feel that particularly women, and I won't say all women, but particularly women do carry that weight of feeling that we have to be polished, buttoned up. We can't make mistakes because it shows a sign of weakness. And so it's really important that through my own experience and what I've learned along the way, right now I'm on the other side of this, that I can help women wherever they are in a leadership journey to say it's okay to be vulnerable because you're human and humans make mistakes and you're actually connecting with others and it resonates more with others. So Rosie, I could talk about this all day long, but that is really how this all started is through my own learnings and what I've learned. And I would say a lot of this is I'm very grateful for my career and the people I've crossed paths along the way. And I wouldn't change anything because the reality is we learn. We learn from every moment, whether it's what we observe in others, how we navigate certain situations. And so what I learned was the beauty of being vulnerable.
Yeah. I love all of that. And there's so many aspects of that are worth just noting and highlighting. And the first is that whether people are listening are male or female or whatever gender they identify with, that this whole idea of one of the myths of vulnerability, that vulnerability is a weakness, is still so pervasive, and that it keeps us, it has us think we have to have it all together. I can't show weakness. I can't show my humanity. And what I appreciate about what you shared, one of the things I appreciate, because I appreciate many things about what you shared, is first of all, like the ripple effect or the tone that it sets for people around you, because we know from all the work on psychological safety, which is the number one enabler, but also number one gatekeeper of team effectiveness and team performance, is that when you have a leader who is not vulnerable, who pretends to have it all together and button up and all of those things, that it actually erodes that sense of psychological safety and therefore team performance, and it leads to dangerous silence. People aren't going to speak up. People aren't going to, because they feel like they can't, it's not a safe space. So one, if you want to have performance, you're actually having the opposite effect. The second thing you said that I think is so important for people to realize, because I swear, we're recording this in 2025 and it's still so prevalent. And I have these conversations on a weekly basis that people just don't understand that there is still very much this double standard, and that, a man can get passionate about something and a woman is labeled emotional or AKA weak. Or, I work with so many women leaders who will say that along their journey, they have felt like they've either had to shut down any feminine aspects of them, of caring, of empathy, of kindness, of connectedness, and show up, in their words, as a bitch to fit in, right? Or you just feel like they have to be something they're not, or be discounted. And it's just so sad, because I feel I've learned from my work that, and I'm sure you have for yours, that when we are doing everything to hide our authentic selves and feel like we have to be something other than we are, there's so much energy that goes into that impression management. It's exhausting, and it wastes time, it wastes energy that we could be spending on so many other productive, effective things. But it happens all the time that we shy away from authenticity because of some narrative that we've created, or some environment that we're in, or a double whammy of both that tells us, no bueno, don't go there. And it's so unfortunate, because it's not helpful. And I just feel like, God, in this day and age, can't we just recognize the strength and the power and the value of authenticity?
Agree. I do want to add one more thing that you brought up, Rosie, that I just want to bring home, which is the unintended consequences of our actions. So when we, again, whether we are or not feeling that way, if we are showing up as perfect, and you talked about the rippling effect, it's those unintended consequences. You talked about the psychological safety, yes, and the unintended consequences of what it does for others and the impact. So you think about how the lack of productivity, the energy, you talked about the energy, and also how people are feeling. And so I did want to bring that back to, I personally didn't realize the unintended consequences of my actions. And that's why it's really important for me to talk about this, because it's not just, especially if you're a people leader, it's not just about you. It's there's unintended consequences and that rippling effect with others. And the other point, as you brought up, being your authentic self, I feel that sometimes, whether it's intentional or not, people have these preconceived notions of who you are or certain expectations. And it's really hard to break out of that mold, right? And to feel that we can be our authentic self. So that's why I talk about authentic leadership and provide tools on what that looks like so I can help people navigate that and help them to get to the other side so they can feel comfortable in their own skin.
So let's talk about what some of those are. So people that are listening are like, okay, yeah, I get it. Vulnerability is a strength. Yep, I get it that leaning to authenticity is important, not just for myself, but people around me. What kind of things would you direct people to, or what kind of things can they leverage to start that journey and to lean into authenticity and vulnerability more?
One is I talk about the ALIGN framework. So that's awareness, language, intention, gravity, and network. And so the awareness is really understanding how you're showing up. That's so critically important. That self-awareness. That's something that I had read last week or 2 weeks ago, a statistic that just blew my mind. It was a study that was done with over 5,000 people, leaders, and they had responded, 95% of them had responded that they were self-aware. And when there was research done with their colleagues, others around them, only 15% of them were self-aware. So that is a staggering statistic, a huge gap. And so it's really important to be aware. Language. So it's not just about what we say, it's how we say it, our tone. If we are speaking too quickly or not allowing time for space for others to respond. Intention. Setting those expectations so others understand what your intention is, what your why is. Gravity. That's when you walk into the room, when you feel that person walking, that leader walking into the room, that charisma they have, the way that they're holding themselves up. Network. I talk about this all the time, Rosie. Surrounding yourself with the people, I call them your personal board of directors, who can lift you up or remind you of your worth. This is a little bit of insight into the ALIGN framework. And then I talk about the leadership presence tools. So that's your body language. Your body speaks before you may even say a word. If you're making eye contact, how you're holding yourself. Then there's the language. And again, it's more about not just what you say, but how you say it. It's your tone. If you're pausing, if you're accentuating certain words as you're speaking to others so they understand the impact. And storytelling is so important, especially because I grew up in the financial services industry. I understand the importance of facts, but stories humanize and they help to connect the dots for others. And so it's really important. And this is also the opportunity to become relatable as a leader, as a person with others by telling your own personal story or business story. So those 3 tools I walk through with my clients when I have speaking engagements and how to use those tools that could be really powerful for the leadership presence.
I love all that. I'm sure we could spend a gajillion hours unpacking each one of those. So, but I want to touch on a couple things. There's a couple things you said that I'm like, oh yeah, like kind of duh. When you're talking about that study, the gap in self-awareness, what that brought up for me, again, I'm like a total research geek, but is like something that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is like, that we tend to very much overestimate our abilities. It's just what we do. Brene Brown talks about it in her new book, Strong Ground. Jen Marr talks about it in her work in Showing Up, where we rate ourselves as highly effective and highly empathetic and able to like see other people when they're struggling. And then, yeah, I'm a good person and I'm supportive, etc. But then like 80 or 90% of us say, yeah. But then the same percent say, no, but I don't feel seen. Or it's I'm self-aware, but not. And so that's just a product of this, that we tend to, as human beings, drastically overestimate our abilities. And we tend to judge and rate ourselves based on intention, but we judge and rate other people based on the actual impact that they have. So we think, oh, my intention is this, therefore, but when there's a mismatch between our intention and impact, we tend to be oblivious to it. So I just want to I'm not surprised that those stats are there. And then here you go. It in today's day and age that it keeps coming up over and over and over. But I want to circle back to something you said, because I had written this down when you and I met the first time, and I want you to expand on this, because I love this idea when you talk about having your own personal board of directors or kind of becoming your own. Talk more about that, because I think this is so fascinating.
Rosie, this started as my own story. So I transitioned from corporate to own my business a few years ago. And I had these mentors and these coaches and these sponsors. But what I didn't realize was when I became intentional with building my support system, again, what I refer to as personal board of directors, because I appreciate it could be named differently depending on where people are. I call it my personal board of directors. I learned that I had this personal board of directors throughout my career, and I wasn't being intentional with them. And so as I told my story, this became of interest in the community here. And so this was something I just started speaking on. This was no plan of mine to initially speak on this. It was because there was a desire to learn more. And this was people, wherever they were in their career journey, anywhere from emerging leaders to seasoned leaders and everywhere in between. And this is a topic that it's one of my favorite topics because I am very much a relationship-based person. I thoroughly enjoy meeting new people, learning about them. And through this journey, I've learned that other people like me may not have realized that they had this support system. Yes, they knew the people they can reach out to, but they didn't realize when they think about their board, whether it's a coach, a mentor, sponsor, expert peer, that they had all these people and they weren't being intentional with it. So it gives me so much joy when I talk about it, whether it's a workshop or a speaking event, when I talk about that and I see this aha moment and I help people with their next step on what can they do to be intentional, whether it's understanding their own values and then looking at their support system of others' expertise that could complement theirs. When I say know who you are and know your strengths and complement those strengths from others, whether it's that or whether it's understanding who's surrounding you and what roles they play and where there might be gaps, or just being intentional. And the one thing I talk about intentionality is making sure that as you grow as a person and as a leader, that the people you surround yourself with continue to grow and evolve with you. So someone who might be in your support system earlier on as an emerging leader, or if you're in a different industry, maybe they don't serve the same purpose, and that's okay. It's really about making sure that you continue to be intentional, surround yourself with the people that are going to continue to help you to grow and thrive. And so it's been such a joy to talk about this the last couple of years.
I think we all logically know this, that as human beings, we are neurobiologically hardwired to be in connection. If you think about any kind of transformation, all the data is very clear that it happens in the context of relationships. It's not a solo journey, yet somehow we get into this headspace sometimes that tells us that either we don't want to be a bother to other people, or that somehow, going back to this idea of vulnerability being a weakness, that somehow if I reach out to others or lean on others for support, that somehow it means that I'm not cutting it, or, I'm less than, and I'm supposed to figure this out by myself. I mean, I coach so many leaders that have this type of head trash running. And I love this idea because you think about like the CEO of any organization, right? Whether you're for profit or not for profit, they report to a board. Right. So businesses have boards of directors, and the board's made up of a variety of different people that bring different skill sets to the table, that bring different perspectives. And again, some are more of like a, rubber stamp. Some are more involved. Some are, there's different facets of how these boards operate. I mean, we facilitate a lot of board stuff, but at the end of the day, it's really the intent of the board is to provide some oversight, but to provide some guidance and some differing perspectives to help challenge what's going on for the CEO and for the executives and for the company. So I love this idea of us having our own personal board of directors, of thinking about, do I have, peers that have different skill sets, that are mentors, that are people who I look up to, that I can surround myself with to either like call me on my crap gently if I'm playing it small or I'm showing up in a way that I don't want to, or who can give me perspective to challenge me to look at things in a different way in the spirit of helping me grow, or can just be that thought partner. And I think so often I was just having a networking meeting, catching up with an old friend and colleague yesterday. I'm like, God, it's been a long time since we've seen one another. And she was talking about that for years. She was so heads down in her organization and her role that her entire network was like inside that organization. And then when that role was dissolved, you're finding yourself, oh my gosh, like I now suddenly being welcomed into all of these different communities, and her personal board of directors, to use your language, has greatly expanded. And she's just so humbled and grateful for it, and talking about, I just want to surround myself with people who are going to lift me up and be an energy giver in my life versus that, in my words, energy vampire. And I think in this world of electronics and social media and digital everything, it's so easy to go inward and isolate ourselves rather than nurturing that. So anyway, I don't know if that's what you think about it, but as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, well, if I'm like CEO of my life, which we all are, well, who do I report to? Well, yes, I'm in charge of my own life, but I get perspective from a board of directors. And am I thoughtful about who makes up that board? Or is that board full of people who are energy vampires who maybe aren't serving me well anymore, that I need to find some new board members? I mean, is that kind of how you have people think about it? Or is there a different way to be thinking about this idea of a board of directors?
So yes. And what I typically start with is understanding yourself and knowing your worth. And so I spend some time, whether it's in a workshop environment or speaking, spending a little time. It starts with us. As you mentioned, we're the CEOs of our career. And so understanding our strengths, understanding where there's opportunities of growth. And I talk about a lot, understanding your why. So before we even get into, here's what it looks like to build your personal board of directors, it's starting with your whys. So again, understanding what are your goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? What is your worth? What are your strengths? Your growth opportunities, again, that's where you look to others to complement your strengths. And that ties into what is that expertise, experiences, and skills that you're looking for. And then you talked about those characteristics. So I talk about understanding what's important to you, surrounding yourself with others, as you mentioned, are going to lift you up and they're going to celebrate you, but they're also going to challenge you in healthy ways. And they're also going to provide you different perspectives. So having as much of a diverse board as possible, whether it's diverse perspectives, backgrounds, experiences, that makes your whole experience even more enriching. And this gets back to vulnerability. One of the things I talk about is looking for those who you can trust, have mutual respect, and be vulnerable with. Those are the key characteristics. Now, again, it's a very personal decision, but we talk about those key characteristics and then thinking about one of the roles, and you touched on this, one of the most important roles that someone on your board can play is providing you that constructive feedback because they want to see you grow. They're investing time in you. And so being open to that feedback. So we talk about, again, starting with your why, moving into what are the characteristics you look for in others, to what are the different board roles and the accountability. And the accountability, part of that is being open to that feedback and sharing your appreciation with others because, again, they're investing their time in you. So again, Rosie, I could go on and on because this personal board of directors topic is such a personal topic. I really enjoy speaking about it, but it is something that it starts with yourself first and understanding yourself and your strengths and then looking around you to see who can complement your strengths. The one thing I wanted to bring back that you mentioned earlier is it's even more important today to know who your support system is because it can be lonely. So whether you're a solopreneur, whether you work for an organization, maybe you're remote or in hybrid environment, it is really important now more than ever that we feel connected with each other. This is beyond performance. This is your health and well-being, feeling connected with others. And so you don't feel like you're alone and have to figure that out. And so it's really complements you, your work, feeling, again, that you don't feel isolated and you don't have to do it all yourself. Because I always say in my talks, you're one person, so you can't be everything to everyone.
I love it. Well, I said we're not for everyone, and that's okay, right? And I think so often, especially I'm just going to say for women, that there ends up being this, mean girls type of thing where we get catty or rather than lifting one another up, it's get competitive. And I was at a women's award gala earlier this spring, and there was an incredible woman who gave a keynote, and her name's Chantel Love, and she talks about like owning your personal brand and everything. And there was something she said that stuck out to me. I think I did a Rosie on my pocket in this as well. I don't even know, but she said, surround yourself with a room full of people who find your success as inspiration, not intimidation. And I think that really ties to this idea of board of directors, right? It's that, we want people who are going to lift us up and cheer us on, but also call us on our crap and like challenge us and help us get to a better version. And so when we have that thought that we have to somehow do it on our own, when we somehow have to have it all together, it's like, no, we don't. And who can maybe support me or can help me fill in this gap or get to where I want to go? But you're right, we have to know ourselves first. So I love all that. So speaking of all this kind of feeding into authentic leadership, I know you have a framework that you teach that kind of helps walk through this. Can you walk us through what that is?
Oh, absolutely. It's the Thrive as a Leader framework, and it has 3 components. The first is your inner leadership. So this is how you show up as a leader. This is all about knowing and living your personal values, knowing and owning your worth, advocating boldly for yourself, and that authentic leadership. And then there's the outer leadership, which is that traditional definition of leadership is creating that culture of trust, inclusion, and belonging, setting clear goals and roles with your team, inspiring others to perform their best. And the last piece, which I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space, is relationships. So it starts with networking with purpose and impact and following through with those connections that you've made to build meaningful relationships. And then looking at your network and to see who can be part of your personal board of directors. So it's the inner outer leadership and relationships. That's part of this Thrive as a Leader framework. And I use that in everything I discuss because I think all 3 of those complement each other and they help one person to grow in their leadership journey.
Well, it's very synergistic with, we also use in and outer, and we piggyback it off of the work from Bob Anderson and Bill Adams from the Leadership Circle. So they talk about inner game and outer game of leadership. So similar to you, inner game it's our meaning making system and our identity and our values and our mindset. And so in the work we do, we talk about like it's the identifying when you have faulty programming getting in your way and limiting mindsets and faulty beliefs. And it's all of the messy human stuff that requires us to get vulnerable, requires us to lean into courage so that we can do the work to strengthen that and kind of upgrade that aspect, that inner operating system, if you will, so that we can show up authentically and not showing up in the self-protective mode. And then what they say is effective leadership requires both a strong inner game and a well-honed outer game. When the outer game is the skills, the practices, the behaviors, the competencies, how do you have growth feedback conversations? How do you set priorities? All of those things that are important. But what they talk about is that, the inner game, it's that operating system runs the outer game. And so often in leadership, we jump to outer game stuff. We're going to send people to a communication class. We're going to give them a LinkedIn learning module on how to set better boundaries or better time management. And we wonder why it doesn't work if it's layered on top of that inner operating system that can't support it. So I love that you're talking about both of those aspects, but I also love that then you're bringing in the relationship piece. Because if you think about it, really the inner and outer game is a lot of self-leadership. And there's a lot that we have to do that I think we skip over. We go to, how do I lead other people? And it's like, well, if you don't know how to effectively show up as a leader yourself, that's problematic. And then you can look at other people. But I do think in this isolated world that's becoming increasingly isolated, I think we do lose sight of the value of relationships and how do we nurture those. And we get so sucked into our own world or tasks or our own crap that we forget or we've lost the ability to look up and see other people and be in relationship and help them feel supported and help them feel effective, which is where this, I think I'm self-aware, most people don't, et cetera, comes in. So I love all of that you're doing. What are the biggest barriers that you found in the work that you do that get in people's way of being able to apply your Thrive as a Leader framework?
I'm hearing a lot that people hesitate to ask for help. So when we get back to the personal board of directors, what I hear often is, I have these people and they're wonderful, but I don't want to burden them. And what I share with them is, our natural instinct as human beings is, in general, is to want to help each other. And so the worst that's going to happen is you reach out and you ask for help, and they might say, I would love to help. And maybe it's not yet, but you don't know until you ask. And so don't make that decision for them. If this is a relationship that you've been cultivating, you've been nurturing, again, it's that mutual respect, trust, that vulnerability. Reach out, have a conversation with them, hear their perspective, and you'd be surprised, more often than not, they would be absolutely want to help you. So I think one of the biggest barriers, as I heard, is asking for help, which is holding them back. And it is, I think, natural for us. It gets back to wanting to figure this out on ourselves, like all ourselves. And what I would say is, it's a muscle that we continue to build, right? And the more comfortable we are with it, the more that we'll reach out and ask for help. And again, the worst that's going to happen is someone says no or not yet. And if that's the case, then that person wasn't meant to be in your support system, on your board. So I would say that's probably the common theme that I've seen. I provide exercises or guides as I go through each of these areas. And I would say what excites me is when I see people go through these exercises, when I know your worth and we talk about advocating boldly for yourself, and there's aha moments that people have of like, I didn't really sit down and go through this. And Rosie, to be honest, I do this with people because I didn't do this until late in my career. You know, I was very blessed. I also worked hard for it. That one door opened to the other in my career. And I realized late in my career that I need to take a step back, and I really need to understand, what are my personal values? What is I know some of what my strengths are in my work, but I didn't really sit down and write it out. And I think that's what's so powerful, is when I work with others, they can see that. And also the conversation about advocating for yourself, I talk about that. There's a distinction between advocating for yourself, which is basically you're sharing your worth, your strengths with others, because people don't know the breadth of your experience, your knowledge, your expertise, even your own direct manager, unless you share that with them, because that might be something that could be used in another team, in your organization, the community. That's different than bragging about yourself, which is more opinionated. This is you sharing, here's my accomplishments, here's how I can help, which is quite different. So that is another eye-opening. So not necessarily answering your question, but the flip side of that is what people may have held themselves back before on taking the time to know their worth or advocating for themselves. It's been really powerful to see them go through these exercises, what they learned about themselves, and how they plan to use that going forward.
Yeah, I love that. So would you be willing to walk us through more tangibly, like what one part of one of those exercises look like? Like if someone's listening and they want to like start to really own their worth and not feel like they're an egomaniac, but like, hey, how do I start to advocate for? Like, what are some of the questions you would actually have them reflect on or have them answer?
So I do have a set of questions I have them reflect on. One is what expertise, experience, skills that you have set you apart from others? What do you want to be known for as a professional, as a leader, or described as from others? Those are the main two at the moment that I can think of.
Well, but even those two are powerful, because if you think about it, and we've been through this exercise even as a business of really getting clear about, there's a gajillion firms out there that do culture and you like with yourself and do leadership, and what makes us different from other people, like what is our niche and what makes us different. And it's a very iterative process where you have to say, well, what is different? Like, what are we seeing? Like, what's the impact we have? What's the approach we take? How do you put words to it? And again, it goes back to that storytelling, but figuring out what that is that sets us apart from someone else. And then if they're looking for this specific thing, like that's not going to be what we do, to really also help people of who are we looking for that is a fit. And so I love businesses do that all the time. I think on an individual level, sometimes we lose sight of that, of thinking about, gosh, or even if someone's at a transition, whether they've been let go or they're like, I don't like what I'm doing anymore, or I think I want to do a different path in my career, it's part of that reflection of what am I good at? What skills do I have? What are the things that give me energy? Because just because I'm good at it doesn't mean it gives me energy. What are the things that perhaps drain me? So I love the idea of kind of taking that inventory. And then it's like thinking about, okay, well, like what's the impact I want to have? What's the legacy I want to leave? What do I want to be known for? And I think that also helps with not just that clarity, but I think that helps with storytelling, that helps with branding, that helps people want to jump in and make a website and get all like the tactical stuff done. But it's like if you think about like selling yourself for a job internally or for another organization that you have no desire to have your own business, you still have to think about like, how do I promote and advocate for myself? Because no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah. And you reminded me of a couple other questions, which is, what do others consistently seek my advice and help with? And you touched on this too. What are my past experiences, accomplishments that others have seen in terms of relationships, projects, and work? So again, I have about a half a dozen questions that I have people walk through as they think about their worth. And that is a really powerful exercise for them as they go through that.
I love that. Well, thank you for that. We want to give something tangible to people. Like, how can you get started, right? And so they can start reflecting on that for themselves. So speaking of self-reflecting, as you know from conversation we had before, is that I'm obsessed with normalizing the messiness of being human. And what we've learned from our work is that no matter how much work we've done on ourselves, no matter how much we know our values and we know our worth and we know who we are, there's something in us that is a self-limiting story that we've had for quite some time that still creeps up, that we have to regulate over and over and over, even if we've done a ton of work on ourselves. And so in the spirit of authenticity and vulnerability, Melanie, would you be willing to share what is a self-limiting story that you still tell yourself sometimes? And when it shows up, how do you move beyond it so that you can still show up as a leader in your life and have the impact that you want to have?
I think, Rosie, I'm still early in my business. So I think for myself, it's wow, how did I get here? And how can I do this? Am I going to be enough for my clients, provide that value that they're looking for? And going through the work that I've done, I will share, Rosie, and you're probably already familiar with this. I've gone through positive intelligence coaching. And so that has been a huge game changer for me. So when I start to feel that those limiting beliefs or that self-doubt creeping in, that's really when I lean into positive intelligence to help me reground myself. It happens no matter how successful we are, no matter where we are in our career, we're human and it happens to us. So I think for me, when that starts creeping in, that's when I keep telling myself, I deserve a seat at the table. I've worked to get here. I have the expertise. And so it's really shifting that negative to positive self-talk. So this is a muscle I continue to flex. I think it's one that I won't project this on others, but again, no matter where you are in your career, I'm a little bit seasoned. So I've learned, I have a lot of learnings along the way. And so I have the tools to help me get there. But I would say even in my younger years in my career, I was almost paralyzed by overthinking and getting back to that feeling that I needed to be perfect. So oftentimes I was spinning, and that resulted in me not being productive. And again, not the results that I wanted. So I've learned a lot through my career. And again, that self-talk still comes in, but I feel like I have the tools, and I feel like I have the tools to help me to address that, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And one of the things that I so appreciate about you sharing that, Melanie, is that we always say that even if you've done the work to upgrade the faulty programming and the limiting beliefs, because we're a human being, it's not a one and done. You're going to have to lean on them. But I always say like subsequent upgrades tend to be quicker. Like, ooh, I can just ground myself and go, you like you used to said, I've earned a seat at the table, da, da, da. That's where we can lean on mantras and quick reminders and, memory triggers, et cetera, to go, nope, ground myself, et cetera, because we've done the upgrade work. I think that sometimes people try to reach to that stuff and it doesn't really work, right? Like they haven't done the work to actually upgrade the faulty beliefs, the limiting beliefs, to move beyond them, to then surround themselves with tools to help do a quick reset in the moment. Those tools are great, they aren't as helpful if you haven't done that upgrade work first. So that makes complete sense. And I always say, like, look, run, people listening, run far, far away from any speaker, coach, consultant, author, leader, anybody who pretends that somehow like they've got it all figured out, that they don't need the tools anymore, that they don't use them, or they're above development, because like we are never done. Like, I'm like, I use these tools because I'm a human being. It doesn't matter that you coach, facilitate, whatever. So there we go. There's my little soapbox. But all right. Are you ready for quick questions?
I am.
Okay. This is going to be a good one. Fill in the blank. Living authentically is.
Wow. There's so many answers to that. Freeing.
Love it. When the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader, what do you do?
I would say that this isn't the opportunity for me.
There you go. What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
I used to live in Bermuda, and I ran a half marathon there.
Nice.
Many years ago.
All right, but never got stuck in the Bermuda Triangle.
No, I didn't.
Good. We're thankful for that. That's awesome. Okay. What is your favorite go-to movie?
Pretty Woman.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I could watch that one over and over, too. Yeah, that's a good one. You work on commission, right? Yeah. Big mistake. Huge. Got to go shopping now.
I just love the storyline and how the characters evolved. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it is good. All right. What is your go-to song?
Alicia Keys' This Girl's on Fire.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. What is something you can't live without?
Sleep.
Oh my gosh, I'm with you. And I'm not getting great sleep these days, and it sucks. And when I get a good night's sleep, I'm like, oh my God, yay, I'm human again.
And I would say second to that is, if it's just me, like my non-negotiable is if I don't get my workouts in each day.
Yeah, I'm not fit for human consumption. Not good. What is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
Oh, my family, my husband and my sons. They just make me very happy.
Love that. Love that. And what are you grateful for right now?
I'll go back to I'm grateful for my family. We never know where life will bring us. I grew up on the East Coast. I never thought I would end up in the Midwest owning my own business. You know, I had this one mindset starting out in my career, and it's been an incredible journey. And through that, I've had incredible friends and family. My family's just been there throughout all these years, and just really grateful and thankful for my family.
Love that. Board of directors, baby.
Yeah.
In a different way. I love all that. Well, one closing question. Melanie, if you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
Take the time to get to know the people on your team. They're not just people who are there to serve. They are people, they're human beings. So take the time, invest in them, get to know them on a personal level. And that time that you invest in them will bring back so much benefit to you, to your team, to your organization, because it's a foundation of trust. And it's so critically important to build those relationships. So take the time to invest in your people, to get to know them. And it could be small gestures. It doesn't have to be grandiose gestures. It could be stopping by to say good morning or asking them how they're doing. It could be something that's simple, but being intentional and investing in the people around you.
100%. There's something to be said for fostering a sense of mattering, that people are valued and they have significance. And again, when we see them as a human beyond the org chart, I agree. It makes a huge difference. Well, Melanie, this has been a delight. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for having a bit of a geek out session with me. Much, much gratitude.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun, Rosie.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.